Hey, Tim Sykes, millionaire mentor and trader here with another FAQ Friday. I like doing these every Friday. If you want, leave a comment just below this video with some questions and I'll try to answer them in a future episode. Today's Q&A is all about dip buying versus short selling. I have several millionaire students who really like short selling. They love short selling gap ups. They love short selling morning spikes, Tim Grittani, most famously. I really have gravitated away from short selling just because it's such a pain in the butt to find shares. When people find out that I'm shorting, especially promoters, they like to squeeze it even more. Everyone knows I cut losses quickly, so I get squeezed out of my positions. For me, I really like dip buying morning panics, especially on pumps, because if I am dip buying, let's say a 20, 30, 40% morning dip, it usually bounces 10, 20, sometimes 30, even 50 or 100% within a few hours. And you can make a lot of money. Dip buying is easier because you're buying. You don't have to reserve shares to short. And if you're wrong, because I'm dip buying pumps specifically, like blatant pumps, like the worst companies in the world, that makes me trade them very cautiously. So I'm not just dip buying any stock that's crashing on bad news. I'm dip buying specifically the first morning panic after a stock has gone up for several weeks, maybe even several months, because there's two forces that usually push the stocks up to bounce. Number one, the promoter involved usually doesn't want to face an investigation and doesn't want there to be too many complaints. So if a stock is dropping 50, 60, 70% in one morning, the promoter will step in and support the bid just to bounce it so that the stock doesn't fall out of bed entirely. And mind you, all these blatant pumps are totally worthless. So they should go down 50 or 60 or 70%. But sometimes promoters like to dip buy themselves and they'll bounce the stock just to avoid prosecution or lessen the chance of it. Secondly, if a stock has gone up for several weeks or several months, you have a lot of people that missed out on the run up. And now they see like this 50, 60, 70% off sale. It's no different than like a Black Friday sale at a clothing store. And everyone's like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can get this thing that I wanted for 50, 60, 70% off. This is the time to buy. So you have a lot of natural dip buyers baked in. And when all these dip buyers come together, the stock can bounce. So I really like that. Short selling morning spikes on pumps does work. For me, just because, promoters really know me. I don't know if I told you this story. I've told this to a few people, but I'll tell everybody. Who cares? It was kind of interesting one time on Skype. You can get added to like group conversations. And I got added to this interesting Skype group, and it was called like promoters and payers, something like that. And maybe, one of you or more of you are a part of it. And there were like hundreds of people in this group. And, it's promoters and payers. It's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, you have literally penny stock promoters, people who get paid to pump up stocks so that whoever's paying them dumps. And then you have the payers who are, I don't know if they're the middlemen or if they're the ones who are actually dumping the stock. But it's this whole group, and they're all talking about, different deals and different pumps. And I'm guessing, one of them screwed over another one. I mean, it's like a whole den of thieves with these promoters if you ever meet them in person or talk with them or know of their deals. So you can't trust any of them. I'm guessing one of them crossed somebody else and they added me on Skype. And I'm seeing this whole conversation and they're talking about all these pumps and I get added and it was like a glimpse of like this other world. And then, I was only in it for a few seconds because a few of like the promoters were like, who let Sykes in? Like, what's going on? It was crazy, right? Have you heard this story, Joey? And so like I immediately got kicked out of the group, but there's a whole group of promoters and payers out there. This was several years ago. I don't know, maybe it got disbanded, but it was kind of crazy to see even just for a few seconds. So if you're shorting and if you're very public like me, and I'm fully transparent, everyone knows my trades in real time, so you can easily bet against me. And if enough people bet against me and causes me to cut losses quickly, I have to get out because that's my strategy. I don't violate my strategy. My trades are transparent. My strategy is transparent. So for me, dip buying is much easier because I have a very specific risk. If I'm dip buying a stock that's crashing, first of all, I have those potential dip buyers. I have the potential promoter supporting it. But also, if it just keeps dropping, sometimes the promoters don't support it. Sometimes the dip buyers, don't matter. There's just a big seller. I cut losses very quickly. So sometimes I'm out within a few minutes if there's no bounce. And you'll see this, like I'll say, zero bounce, I'm not risking it because I know that I'm buying the worst of the worst. I'm not just dip buying like any random company on bad news. I'm dip buying a blatant pump, ideally on the first morning panic. I don't like dip buying afternoon panics because that can lead to morning panics the next day, or halts. A lot of these pump and dumps, get halted overnight. There's very little risk of them getting halted intraday. So I really like dip buying these morning panics. If I'm wrong, I cut losses, or maybe I take small gains and I make or lose 5%. If I'm right, I make upwards of 20, 30, sometimes 40%. And even when I lock in the 20 or 40% inside of like an hour or two, sometimes the bounces go up and their stock is up 50, 70, 100% off the lows. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And for me, that's just a pattern that really has started working for me the last few years. If you watch my early DVDs, early video lessons, I'm primarily short biased. So it's changed, and I've evolved and I've adapted a little bit over time, and I encourage you to do the same. I don't want you just memorizing one pattern. I don't want you just trading one pattern all your life. Be open to new patterns. Understand that the stock market, changes over time, and you can change over time and you can evolve. So you try different strategies, you see what works best for who you are, your schedule, your personality, and you try to either cut losses quickly like I do and take bigger gains. That grows your account over time. But to those of you guys who like to short the morning spikes or short other plays, that's fine too. Every now and then I still do short. It's not like I'm a 100% buyer. I think if you look at my stats though, I'm like 80% longs lately. And in the past I've been like, 20 or 30% long. So I flip and I adapt in the pursuit of success. But pretty much every single year that I've been trading, I've made like six figures. Whether it's 100,000 or 200,000, I've made $800,000 or $900,000 in a year. Before, I've actually never made seven figures in any one year. One of my haters was like, "You're not a real trader. You never made seven figures in any one year." And I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't know this was a competition to make seven figures in any one year. I thought that it was okay to make six figures and for it to add up to seven figures over time. It's kind of funny, some of the messages I get and the assumptions that people make, like, "You're not a real trader unless you make seven figures." I don't know what kind of horse shit that is, but I know a lot of great traders who make six figures a year, and plus I make the market work for me. I could make a lot more if I just sat my ass in New York City, like many traders do, and they live there, and they have all the industry contacts, and that's fantastic. For me, I like to trade off a laptop. I like to travel. I've been to over 100 countries now. I'm building schools. I have 35 schools that are built or in development, so I like going to see them and visiting the kids and seeing the communities. So you have to do what works best for you. There's not any one right way to do things, and what works for you might work different from other people. So props to Tim Grittani and all the people who prefer short selling. Props to me and anybody who likes dip buying. Choose what pattern works for you, but ideally learn from all of us and take what you want. Watch Tim Grittani's great DVD called Trading Tickers. Watch my Penny Stocking Framework DVD to learn about my dip buys. Study it all and try it all too. Cheers.